So we're all sitting around the radio station one afternoon. Ralph Bristol does mornings. I do 9 to noon. This guy's name from Arkansas. Oh, Mike Huckabee was doing noon to 3. So we're all sitting in the jock room and we're trying to figure out who's going to run for president. Naturally, as you can imagine, because I'm such an upper and I'm so charismatic, everybody wanted me. And I said, you know, I got young kids, I need sleep, I'm a little league coach, the Snyders are my role models. Huck, you got to do it one more time. He was the governor for many years. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma 20 years. And most of those 20 years, with the exception of a couple with Frank Keating, I was wishing he was my governor. I cast a very proud vote as a United States citizen and the head of my household in Franklin, Tennessee, when he ran for president the first time. I still believe in him today. I think he is a voice of truth, a voice of reason, a voice of wisdom, and I more than believe he is capable of running the United States of America at a time so critical as we have. And I know he's more than capable than delivering a speech that will make this a night to remember. Presidential candidate, Honorable Governor from Arkansas, Mike Huckabee.
To stand up if somebody just got your dessert. Let me begin by saying thanks to Michael for far more of a generous introduction than I ever could have given myself. And I appreciate his friendship. I appreciate his commitment to truth, his commitment to Christ, his professionalism, and his vision for what the Bridge Ministry already means to Nashville and to people who desperately need it. And it would be impossible for me to stand here and not say how proud I was to hear Arkansas's own Martins. My goodness, I love those guys. Wow. Of course, the reason they're so good is I recruited them when they were young and worked with them and got them singing, as you heard tonight. I tell people I really don't sing, but if I did, it would sound a lot like that, I'm pretty sure. What a blessing. And I've been listening to them for, I guess, as long as they've been singing, or pretty close to it. In Arkansas, they are considered a true treasure of the state. They are loved. Their careers have gone and taken them all to the world. But the blend of their voices, and you saw the evidence of it tonight, it is like those three voices, God knitted them together. Maybe it's genetic, I don't know. But I've never heard three people who have such perfect harmony and who can just take us literally to the threshold of heaven with their songs. And so to Jonathan, to Joyce, and to Judy, wow. Make me one promise. Should I be so fortunate to be elected to be president, will you please commit that you will be there on Inauguration Day and make it one special day to remember? Now, folks, let me explain. That's how you get 3 votes, okay? I may not get any others, but I just won theirs. I want to be very clear tonight. I'm not here to be political. This is not a political event. And what Candy does, the Bridge Ministry, is not a political organization. And I want to be very, very clear that in no way is my presence here tonight indicative of an endorsement from Candy personally, her staff, her board, or Bridge Ministry, because it's a nonprofit organization. This event was scheduled long before I committed and decided to run for president, but I wanted to keep it on my calendar, and I'm very grateful that Candy was willing to let me come in spite of being a candidate. But I just want you to know that tonight I'm taking off the political hat. And this is not a political appearance. It is not on my political schedule. I'm here because I truly believe in what Candy is doing with the Bridge Ministry. I truly believe it represents what ought to be done in communities across America. And I'm also here because I know that I've already been allocated quite a bit more time than I got in the CNN debate, and I figured that I really should take advantage of that. I told Bill O'Reilly, I said, Bill, I'm not sure if I'm at a CNN debate or if I'm standing in line at the DMV. I know some of you are too young, but those of you who might remember the old 1960s sitcom, Gilligan's Island. Remember, Gilligan and the skipper took the minnow out on a 3-hour tour, which was shorter than the CNN debate. And both were shipwrecked. But at least Gilligan and his crew eventually got rescued. That's 3 hours and 20 minutes of my life I will never, ever get back. Several of you asked me more questions at dinner than I got during the CNN debate. And I had more time to answer them. So part of my reason for being delighted to be here is actually knowing that I have an opportunity to share a few minutes with you. And to do so because what has happened in Nashville, Tennessee, under the Jefferson Street Bridge is nothing short of a miracle. To think that a member of one of America's most celebrated gospel singing families would one day decide she was going to make a pot of jambalaya and go out and serve it to some people she had no idea who they were, and just give them some warm food. And she served food to all of 7 people under a bridge, because that's where they lived. It changed their lives, but she had her life changed by them. And now every Tuesday, more than 1,000 people gather under the bridge and receive warm food and clothing. But they receive something more than just something to wear and something to eat. They receive something that no government program can ever give them. What they receive is love, and they receive hope, and they receive the affirmation of being a human being. And people who have been homeless for a while sometimes forget they're even human because nobody treats them like that. The people who gather under that bridge are often people who wear the clothes that you have thrown away and decided that they're not good enough for you to wear anymore. And in fact, you perhaps have said, as we all have, well, I guess I'll just throw these away. And your spouse will say, no, don't throw them away. Let's give them to charity. And so it was just a split-second decision that they either went into the trash can or they went onto the bodies of someone who was glad to have them, but they're wearing the garments that someone else had already discarded and decided were not good enough for them. And in many cases and in many shelters across the country, people eat the food that others didn't want anymore. In many communities, restaurants will give the food that wasn't eaten by the patrons, not the leftovers on their plate, but the food that they could not use and it was about to go bad, they would give it to homeless shelters across the country. And this happens in virtually every city across America. Candy is making sure that people have more than just the throwaways. That people are having something that has worth and value because they are treated like people with worth and value. I believe the thing that describes America most is that phrase in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The reason that I am unapologetically pro-life has to do first with what I believe is the teaching of the Word of the living God. That there is no such thing as a person without intrinsic worth and value because God made every single human being, and there's no such thing as a disposable if God made it. There's no such thing as an expendable if God made it. The equality of our lives has nothing to do with our last name or how much money we have or how much land we own. It has nothing to do with how famous or popular or beloved we are. It has only to do with the fact that God has made us. And even though there may not be equality in capacity, gifts, abilities, there is equality in basic intrinsic worth, which means that the child with Down syndrome is of equal value to God, and ought to be to us, than is the captain of the football team. There is no difference in terms of worth and value. And that person who lives under a bridge is as loved by God as is the most renowned preacher or pastor in all of the world. There's no difference. When I think about what the Bridge Ministry is all about, I think about what Jesus is all about, because there was never a person that he thought he was better than so that he would not reach out and touch them and love them and meet their needs. In fact, the only people that Jesus couldn't do anything with were the people who didn't think they needed anything. And to this day, the only people Jesus can't change are the ones who don't think they need to be changed. The ones who say, I guess the sinners need it. If I were a sinner, I guess I would need it. How smug it is to think that maybe somebody else is a sinner and we're not. Sin nature is not something that means that we're a serial killer. It just simply means that we have a self-centered nature. And for those who don't think they have one, I just would suggest that the next time you are in a group photo and you look at it for the first time, whose image do you look for first? And I know the answer to that question, and that means you are a sinner. You didn't hurt anybody. You just said, me first. And that's what sin is, a little S, a little N, and a great big I in the middle. And in order to do what is done every Tuesday, in fact, it is done throughout the year, to go from a little pot of jambalaya feeding 7 people to a 20,000-foot warehouse that now distributes 20,000 pounds of groceries every single week to people who are homeless right here in your community. And I heard Candy say earlier when we were talking to the local media that there are 11,000 homeless people in Nashville, Tennessee. 11,000. You will drive past some of them on your way home. You may not even see them. They're there. 11,000. 4,000 of them are children. I thought, my gosh, that's more people than grew up in my hometown. There were only 8,000 there. And that included the dogs, the cats, and the mosquitoes. 11,000 people. Whether Candy is able to reach all of them through the Bridge Ministry, the point is that this organization has grown dramatically from the time when everyone supporting what she was doing could sit at one of the round tables to now having 1,000 people packed into this beautiful facility on the Lipscomb University campus. I come tonight to not just pay tribute to what you're doing, but to remind you that what is being done is really the way we should take care of people who are poor and needy in our country. You know what I'm proudest of the Bridge Ministry? Not one dime of the money they receive comes from the federal, the state, or the local government. Not one dime is government money. That's one of the reasons this organization has been so successful, because the government hasn't messed it up yet. You know what I worry about? I worry because I see what's happening in our country, and I fear that if we do not get to the place where we pray ourselves back into God's blessing, I fear that organizations like the Bridge Ministry that never had one finger of help from the government will have the heavy fist of the government tell them, you can't do what you do because you have to have a permit to do what you do, and you can't have the permit if you're going to tell people about Jesus, because that might be religious and that might be offensive to somebody. And I would want you to know that the cross of Jesus Christ has always been offensive to people, that it is always the only thing that changes a person from the inside out. And God bless the Bridge for preaching the gospel. And so before the government decides to close down organizations like the Bridge, I hope that you realize that there is a much better way to reach homeless, hungry, hurting people than to see your taxes go up so the government can create another program that mostly will be spent by bureaucrats and middlemen who will live through the industry of poverty and make a pretty good living by ignoring the real people who needed help in the first place. I hope you will realize that the generosity of your gifts here tonight and beyond, whether it's monthly, annually, every week, or through your volunteer hours and efforts, it will always be better than believing that the government should be doing what the Bridge Ministry does. Because even if the government could equal in dollars what you do through your contributions, what the government could never do is put its arms around someone and say, I love you. And the government couldn't and wouldn't ever be able to say, the reason I'm here with the food and the clothes is because the love of Jesus Christ in me compels me to love you. Because God loves you as much as He loves me. And one of the greatest things that I celebrate tonight with the Bridge Ministry is that very powerful reality that this is not an organization that is carried out because they go and beg the government for grants. Because they know that the day they take a government dime, they'll take government control. And if you've ever been around Candy, the one thing you know, the only person who controls her and this organization is the Lord Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, and God the Father. And that's a governing council that will exceed anything on this planet. We live our lives on this earth in a way that we ultimately have to decide what's important, what's valuable, what do we give to. I will tell you the happiest people I've ever met in my life are the people who invest in the lives of others, especially when they invest in the lives of others who really can't do anything in return. If you only invite people to eat with you who can invite you back, the reciprocity of that can be rewarding, but not really fulfilling. If you can do something for someone who will never be able to repay you back, and the only payment will be the eternal rewards for having ministered as Jesus would on this earth, that is the key to being the most joyous person that you'll ever be. My wife and I have been married for 41 years, which I think is amazing that she has put up with me all this time. I would say that it's amazing that I put up with her, but that's not true. She's been pretty easy to be living with. I'm not so easy. I've drugged her through some interesting experiences, including political races over the last 25 years. We have 3 grown children. They're out on their own, all in their 30s, out of college, and doing their own thing now. I tell young parents sometimes that the 2 greatest days in a parent's life, the day the kid is born, and the day that he gets out of school and off your payroll and on someone else's. And now we have something more wonderful than children. Grandchildren. Oh, don't worry, I'm not going to show you photos. I have 3,216 on my iPhone. I could show you, but I won't do it because then you would start showing me yours and we'd be here for days. I only bring up the fact that those grandkids are here because there's such a joy in knowing that God has kind of said yes to at least one more generation. And it's also an affirmation to know that my kids are out of my house. and I don't have to raise them anymore. Because that was a job. Especially my middle son, David. I don't know how many of you have a middle child, but my middle child was a classic textbook middle child. And sometimes I would get a call, and my wife would simply send word, "You need to come home. It's David." I was at the office one afternoon. My assistant came in and said, "Your wife just called. Said you need to hurry home. It's David." I said, "You better cancel the rest of the afternoon. My guess is I won't be back. I'll let you know." I jumped in the car and I drove home. And as I pulled into the driveway, my wife was standing at the garage door. The garage door was up. She was standing just inside the garage, her arms folded like this. And the look on her face told me I should have driven more slowly on the way home. I got out of the car and I said, "What's up?" And she gave me that look and said, "Come here, I want you to see what your son has done." I knew it was bad because he was always my son when he had done something really crazy. He was only 3 years old. We were years away from the teenage years, but that's a whole other book. 3 years old. And she said, "Come here, see what your son has done." So I walked in and she said, look over there. She pointed to the freezer. I said, "What?" She said, "Look inside it." I opened the freezer door. It was in our garage, a nice upright freezer. I said, "What? It's full of food." She said, "Take a closer look." I did, and I found that all the food in the freezer was thoroughly thawed out. I said, "How did this happen?" She said, "Well, your son, who loves to play with knobs and buttons, opened the door, turned the freezer off, and never turned it back on." Now, the food was still thoroughly refrigerated, cooled and chilled. It had not rotted or spoiled in any way. It was perfectly fine, but it was just thoroughly thawed out, everything in the freezer. And I said, "Well, this is easy. We'll just turn the freezer back on. We'll start it up and we'll freeze it." And she said, "I don't think you can do that." I said, "Why?" She said, "I just don't think you can just refreeze food once it's thawed out like that." I said, "Well, I don't know why you couldn't." I said, "I'll call the county extension people and I will just ask them." So I did. And I called and I said, "Hi, we have a freezer full of food. It's all thawed out. None of it's spoiled. It's still chilled. There's ice crystals on a lot of it, but it is thawed out. And I'm having a discussion with my wife. I'd like to just turn the freezer back on and refreeze the food. Can I do that?" And the lady said, "You mean everything in the freezer is thawed out?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. That's right. Everything in the freezer is thawed out." I said, "Can I just turn the freezer back on and refreeze it?" She says, "Oh, no, you can't do that. No." I said, "Well, it's not spoiled or anything." She said, No, you can't do that." I said, "Well, then what do you suggest I do? I got a whole freezer full of food. I got meat, I got vegetables, I got prepackaged frozen foods, I got all sorts of stuff in here. What do you suggest I do?" She said, "Well, there's only one thing you can do, sir. You're going to have to go ahead and cook all that food." I said, "Ma'am, we're talking about an entire freezer full of food." She said, "Well, I'm just telling you, you can either use it or you will lose it." Oh, I got a poet as well. How nice. So I said, "Well, let's call everybody we know." We called our staff, we called neighbors, we called friends. We said, "Come to dinner at our house tonight." I didn't explain why. I just said, "Why don't you guys come over?" We started inviting friends. As soon as we made the phone calls, we got to work. Have you ever cooked everything in your freezer at one time? Do you know how hard that is? So we get 4 burners on the stove going. We get the conventional oven. We have a microwave oven. We have a barbecue grill. Somebody as a wedding gift had given us a fondue pot. We had never used it. That night we got it out of the box. We were using it. Anything that would make heat, we were cooking with. I think the kids were cooking with a blow dryer at that point. And everything in the freezer we had out, and we were preparing it, and we were cooking it. And a little after 5, friends started coming over, and they would walk in, and they would go, "Wow, what are we having?" I said, "Don't worry, I'm pretty sure there will be something here that you really like." And they'd come in the kitchen, they'd see all this stuff. They thought maybe that we thought the end of the world was near, and we were ready for the last moment. And of course, then I would have to explain to them, well, David got in the freezer, turned it off, food's thawed out, we have to cook it all. And they would laugh real loud. They thought, "That is so funny." They go over and pat David on the head. I said, "Don't you encourage that boy, because if you do, he goes home with you." Well, I'm going to tell you, that night we made pans of food and sent to neighbors and sent home with people. People ate so much, they were about to pop, and they stayed and they visited, they laughed, we had a great time, we saw friends we hadn't seen in a long time. Honestly, it was a very pleasant evening because we had a lot of food, we had a lot of friends, and they had a lot of fun. Frankly, they were having more fun than me because I was paying for all the food. But after we finally got them all out of our house and I'd gone to bed, I was laying there and I was thinking, okay, God, I believe that every little experience in life is one of those things that you use to teach us some powerful lesson. So, God, if you could just help me to know, what is the lesson here? I want to know, because I want to pass the course, because the tuition tonight has been very, very high. And as clear as anything I've ever heard from God, it was as if the Lord said, that food, perishable, wasn't it? Yes, God, it was. And with a perishable, if you don't use it, you lose it. Yes, God, that's right. What else is a perishable? Then I remember the scripture that all of us are perishing. Our lives were perishables. Suddenly, for the first time, I saw it in the image, in context. And I thought, you know what? It's very true. And I don't mean to be somber here tonight, but let me just point something out. It is a pretty fair statement to say that 100 years from tonight, every single one of us in this room will have perished. Some of us much sooner than that. But within 100 years, all of us will have perished. And then it was as if God was saying, what will you do with your life? It's a perishable. Then I realized there's only one of two choices. With the life that God has given us, we can either give it away, or we will end up having to throw it away. It's really the only option we have. We're perishing. All our stuff is going to rot. Can't take our money with us. And so what will we do with the treasures that God has given us that are perishables? Will we give them away, or will we throw them away? Will we use them, or will we lose them? Tonight we celebrate and we appeal to those who in this city can make an extraordinary investment in the lives of people that so many have completely forgotten. And with that which God has given you, you can help become on your way to be one of the happiest people in Nashville. Because if you give away, you will be filled with joy. If you throw away, you will be bitter. I got to thinking about, we had a lot of fun and laughter in our house that night. We saw friends we hadn't seen for a while. What if we had decided that we weren't going to share any of that food, and we were just going to load it up in plastic garbage bags, take it to the curb, and let the trash men pick it up the next day? Do you think there would have been laughter and joy in our home that night? There would not have been. And little David would have slept standing up, I'm pretty sure. But we didn't throw it away, we gave it away, and it became a great reminder to me that this is how God deals with us in giving us life. And so you will have the choice. Will you give away that which the Lord has blessed you with, or will you throw it away? Sadly, there are people, some who live under bridges, who have all but been thrown away. You know, the one person who shows up under that bridge every single night is Jesus Christ. Whether we go or not, he'll go. Somebody says, how do I meet Jesus? Well, one way, you show up where he is. And if you want to know where he's going to be where people are gathered that nobody else loves, cares about, or even is aware that they're there. Do you believe God has given Candy Christmas an extraordinary just radiance and glow and joy? To be around her is to be around a person who just exudes that sense of God's love. Do you know why she feels that way? Why she is that way? A person who a few years ago was fighting depression and now, just pours out joy. Because she shows up every Tuesday where Jesus shows up. And it really rubs off on her. Will you take your life tonight, and instead of throwing it away, decide you will give it away? Keeping the government out of what God is doing, and doing it in His name, and changing lives. Thank you for what you do, and may you do it with more generosity than you've ever done it before, to the glory of God, and to meet the needs of the people under the Jefferson Street Bridge. Thank you, and God bless you. Honor to be with you. Thank you very much. Candy, God bless you.